Welcome to the S.O.A.P video series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We are almost to the end of the book of Jeremiah. We have two sessions left, right?
Yeah, it's always good being almost done.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're going to be here's the big overview. We're starting in chapter 45 and we'll go through 52 over the next two sessions.
Right.
Okay. But out of those chapters, all of them, except for 45 and 52, are just prophecy about foreign nations. From 46 to 51, it's just God through Jeremiah pounding.
Yeah, that's a good, because I was going to say, sometimes prophecy can be good and sometimes bad, and I think it's all the way bad.
This is pretty much bad. So we start with some really neat encouragement. I definitely want to take some time in 45, and then next time we'll end with chapter 52, which is more historical narrative. But the in-between, it's just a lot of...
So let's back up a little bit. So where we're at this point is Jerusalem has fallen at this point. So we think, oh, we're finally done. But we're not, because there's always a bunch of cleanup.
Yeah.
And last week, King Nebuchadnezzar gave Jeremiah choices, which was kind of odd, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody else is dying.
Yeah.
And
with no choice. No options at all.
You get choices. Where do you want to go? And we'll help you get there. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he appointed a governor. That governor's been assassinated, so things are still in a turmoil and kind of going crazy. And a group of people came to Jeremiah and said, we need your help. Where should we go? What should we do? Where should we go? So Jeremiah said, well, I'll pray to God. Praise to God. 10 days later, you should stay in Jerusalem. So they immediately take Jeremiah and they go to Egypt, right? So nothing good is going to happen there, and that's what we found out last week. And along with Jeremiah was Jeremiah's friend that went, and you always pronounce his name different than I would pronounce it.
Yeah, Baruch.
Baruch.
Yeah. It means be blessed, actually, which is really it's interesting as we come into chapter 45. It means be blessed, or like in the song, blessed be the name, of the phrase, blessed be the name. That would be the blessed be.
Oh, nice.
The blessed be is Baruch.
So you should remember him because he's the one that actually wrote down everything Jeremiah did and then took the scroll, went before the king, and was reading it. And as he was reading it, King Zedekiah would cut off the piece that he already read and throw it in the fire.
Yeah.
So in effect, he took the book of Jeremiah and burned it.
Yeah.
So Baruch.
It comes from the same root though, because Barak means to bless, and Baruch is blessed be or be blessed. So we're close.
Okay. That guy.
Yeah. Stupid vowels.
Yeah. He went and wrote it down again.
Yeah. Right. With more and add stuff to it.
Which is cool. So if we think about it, you made a comment one time, I'm not sure if it made it on or not, that isn't this the book of Jeremiah? Yeah. So would this have been the book of Jeremiah?
Yeah, probably. I think there were probably some like we've learned that Jeremiah sent a letter to the exiles and stuff like that. That may have been included. I don't know that we have everything. We may have everything, but I don't think we can definitively say everything that Baruch wrote down is what we have.
But
a lot of it, I'm sure.
So this chapter 45, is all about Baruch.
Yeah.
Did I finally get it right?
Yeah, you got it.
All 5 verses.
It's the shortest chapter in the whole. Back to fun facts here. Jeremiah, even though it is shorter in by number of chapters, it's only 52 chapters. It's longer content than any of the other, let's say, prophets. Okay. So it's a long book. Lots of verses in, whatever. This is the shortest chapter, 5 verses, and it's all about this guy.
Yeah. So here's verse 3, and this is God saying what this guy had already said. And it said, you have said, I feel so hopeless, for the Lord has added sorrow to my suffering. I am worn out from groaning. I can't find any rest. Yeah. I mean, it sounds bad, but this guy's been through a lot.
He has been through a lot.
Right? Yeah. Right. His whole nation, as far as he knows, is going to be dead.
Yeah.
All right. Now, God has told him it's not. He hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
But he knows that a whole bunch of people went to Babylon. He knows some people are in Egypt.
He's been working closely with Jeremiah. There's one bad message after another.
Right.
I mean, it had to have grown heavy on him, he had to have grown weary,
Yeah.
of this.
Right.
By the way, quick note, verse 1 says that this happened in the 4th year that Jehoiakim was, the son of Josiah, was ruling over Judah. That 4th year of Jehoiakim has shown up a lot in Jeremiah. It's like we keep coming back to that year because that was right at the beginning. This is the 605, right at the beginning of Nebuchadnezzar's reign when he comes to take Israel, or Judah, the first time.
Yeah.
So every time we come back to this happened in the 4th year, this happened in the 4th year, this happened in the 4th year, we're talking major beginning of this whole thing. So that means that Baruch here, even very early on,
knew what was going to happen.
It was getting tired and was
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So they hadn't ripped up the book yet, burnt it yet. They hadn't. A lot of these things hadn't happened yet, right? And he's already saying, "Oh man, what is this world coming to?"
Right. So God responds with, "Dude, I'm in the middle of executing my plans, right? I'm in the middle of tearing down Jerusalem. I'm going to tear down the rest of the world," and that's what Daniel alluded to. That will hit some this week and then next week.
Yeah.
And he said, "And you're looking for great things?
Yeah.
Isn't that a little too much?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a little harsh.
Yeah,
right?
but it's still encouraging because there's the aspect that sometimes we are afraid to make our feelings known. We're afraid that God's going to zap us if we tell him what we really think or whatever. And here he is just pouring it all out, and God listens.
Yep.
And God responds, and he says, "Hold on a second. You're not seeing the big picture. I am at work here. I know what it looks like from your perspective, but don't forget that there's another perspective."
Right. And then he also says to him, "I'm about to bring disaster on all of humanity, but I'll allow you to escape with your life."
Yeah.
Right. So there is definitely grace.
Yeah. A ton of grace. And Baruch was not doing this because he was a bad guy. He was not a rebel. He truly wanted what was best for Judah. He truly wanted to honor and serve God. And he was just getting tired of the ministry.
Right.
He was tired of the everything. And God was gracious and he paid attention.
So God told him not to go to Egypt.
Yeah.
Now, am I right in thinking it was the people? It wasn't necessarily Jeremiah and this guy that he told not to go. They were kind of we keep saying kidnapped, and it was kind of a nice term. Right? They were brought along with them.
Right.
So they really didn't have a choice. So it does make sense that for the people that intentionally went to Egypt when God said not to, that bad things are going to happen to them, while Jeremiah and the other guy.
Yeah,
we'll come out unscathed.
Yeah, see, because the thing is, like we talked about last time, is that one of Jeremiah's prophecies, he put the rock under the dirt. This is where Nebuchadnezzar's going to sit his throne. And everything, because the reason they were going to Egypt was to save themselves. They were going to find refuge in Egypt. Egypt will protect us. Nebuchadnezzar is going to come into Jerusalem. Egypt will protect us. Right. So we're going to go down to Egypt. God said, "No, I'm going to protect you if you stay here." No. Egypt will protect us. He's like, okay, but Nebuchadnezzar is going to destroy Egypt, and if you're in Egypt,
right,
you're
going to be destroyed.
You're going to be destroyed too. So yeah, Jeremiah and Baruch were kidnapped. They were taken down there. It was against they didn't want to go, but they weren't there looking for refuge.
Looking for refuge.
Yeah. That's why it was everybody else and not them. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so now we hit chapter 46.
Yeah.
Right, and we have at least 5 chapters, if not more.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
Of bad things are going to happen to this nation. Bad things are going to happen to that nation.
Yeah.
So we see God kind of taking care of all of his business at once.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, there's going to be some very specific names mentioned, specific countries or cities, and we can put it up on a map here. We can show you that it's going to be Egypt, there's Babylon, there's modern day Jordan, there's Persia and Iran, there's Syria. Basically, everybody
Everything.
around Israel, everybody around Israel is going to.
So is this even back to the Promised Land time? Some of the people.
Oh no! This was all still going to be. This was all still going to be.
Well, I know it's future.
Yeah.
I know it's future event, but I can't think of anybody in there. The Philistines.
The Philistines, yeah.
Yeah.
So they were still there. David subjected them when he was a king, and Solomon still taxed and everything, but they never wiped them out. They were still sort of like a thorn in the side of
right,
Israel.
but they're one of the nations that God does deal with, and is he dealing with them because of what happened previous?
Oh yeah, partially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, partially.
Sorry. I totally botched that whole question, but I think you get the idea there.
Yeah. A lot of these. So, for instance, when we get over to chapter 48, for instance, 48 and 49, at the end of this week's reading, we have Moab, we have Ammon, we have Edom. Okay. Moab was basically a cousin. Okay, so Abraham's nephew Lot,
Right.
and his daughters, when they escaped Sodom and Gomorrah back in Genesis 19, his daughters, when they were hiding out in the cave, got dad drunk, and they both became impregnated, okay, by their drunken father Lot.
Right.
Well, their sons were Moab and Ammon. Okay. So those two are cousins, and then they're cousins then of like Isaac and Jacob, and so they're Israel's cousins. They're in modern day Jordan. Okay, so if you think of the map, you're just on the other side of the Dead Sea, basically, right? In fact, Amman is the capital of Jordan. It's still, you can still trace some of its name back there, right? Edom was Esau, Jacob's twin brother. Esau,
Right.
his family down there at the southeast corner, still sort of modern day Jordan. You're getting into the Arabian Peninsula a little bit, where Sodom and Gomorrah and stuff were destroyed. So you're talking about these groups over on the west side. They had been torturing Israel since Israel came out of Egypt. As they're wandering around the desert, they come up to go into the Promised Land after their 40 years in the desert. They said, "Please, can we cross through your territory,
Right.
through your
Moses
land?"
asked them,
Moses
right?
asked them
Yeah.
this. This was 800 years before Jeremiah. Now,
Right.
can we please cross through your land? No, we will stay on the highway. No,
Yeah, we stay on the road.
we will not take even a grape, and if we do, we'll give one back. We will plant, we will do anything if we can just cross through your territory. No. And then they attacked them. They attacked Israel. And then Israel got into their land, and they were constantly. So Obadiah talks about Edom. Nahum talks about these countries, these nations. So, yeah, we're talking long centuries of oppression
Right.
against Israel. Damascus is up in Syria. That's it's on its way to Nineveh, where Jonah talked about. These names show up all over the prophets.
Right. So, are there any groups of people that should be on this list that aren't on the list?
The one that surprises me, honestly, is Lebanon is not on this list, which is due north of Israel. Lebanon is still a problem. Okay, Hezbollah is up there as a terrorist group. I'm surprised that Lebanon is not on here. We do find them in other prophetic books. We find them mentioned. But Lebanon is sort of between Israel and Syria. So the fact that Damascus is mentioned, I find it interesting. You would see Tyre and Sidon. The cities of Tyre and Sidon
Right.
are would be in modern day Lebanon.
Okay.
So I'm surprised they're not in here, especially because there are a couple of nomadic groups from the Arabian Peninsula, Kedar and Hazor. We know almost nothing about them. Why did they get in here?
Right.
We're not told. Why is Elam in here? Persia, Iran? We're not really told. It just says here's going to be what happens. Babylon makes sense. Egypt makes sense.
right,
You know, even
right.
Damascus to a point makes sense. Some of these other ones were like,
Right. So I see a couple big points in each of these chapters. They're all completely different, but there are some similarities in
Yeah.
there. There's a nation, a group of people that are named. Then God says what's going to happen to them, and then God gives some prophecy on, well, what's going to happen is prophecy, but then God gives more prophecy on what's going to happen to them in the future.
yeah,
So you kind of have to read it with that thought in mind. So in other words, Egypt's going to be attacked by King Nebuchadnezzar and an army. He's very specific on who's going to attack. Egypt will be utterly defeated. But later on, people will again live in Egypt.
yeah,
Now he doesn't say it's as prosperous as it's going to be before.
Right.
Doesn't say he's going to be a world power, but people will still live there.
Yep.
That same thing doesn't happen with all these groups of people.
No,
right.
it
So you have
does
to
happen.
kind of
It does happen with Jordan, you know.
Yeah.
So the Moab Ammon area does happen with them, but not with everybody. I find it interesting that as nations, or as you know, whatever, the Moabites, as far as I know, don't exist anymore. The Ammonites don't exist anymore. Egyptians do. Jordanians do. There are still people
Right.
in those areas, even if they're not that specific group. But Egypt, here's really cool. If you go to Zechariah 14, Egypt is specifically mentioned as a nation that will still exist in the millennium.
wow.
Yeah. And they're called out. They're called out, you know, even if the Egyptians don't follow this law, I will send no rain on them. But they're still there as an intact nation, whereas some of these won't be.
Yeah. Descendants of Israel are specifically brought out. Verse 28, I will indeed discipline you, but only in due measure. I will not allow you to go entirely unpunished.
Yeah.
Right? So not only, I mean, Israel needed to be punished too, so do these other nations. It's like God is wiping the slate clean,
Yeah. Yeah.
or mostly clean at one period of time.
Yeah. So this would be what would be called an ancient, let's say, day of the Lord. Okay, there have been many days of the Lord throughout Israel's history, throughout world history, but nothing like the great and terrible day of the Lord that is still to come.
Right.
These are sort of like previews of it, and these were pretty bad. So
Yeah.
if these were this bad and people were, you know, all but wiped out, imagine what the future judgment when
Right.
Jesus actually comes to really do business with people.
Yeah, we could talk about each one of these.
Yeah.
I think it's worth. It's definitely worth people reading and taking the time to, know these real events, real people. Basically, Nebuchadnezzar is coming through to all these places.
Yeah.
And God is using Nebuchadnezzar to His will.
Yeah. So there are a lot of specific names. You know, the Gulf of Aqaba is mentioned in here, and so just some fun detail. I mean, it's not a fun section, right? But it's just some fun detail, some fun things to look at, and yeah. So it's not like one of those passages where we're like, hey, have fun with this, but yeah, like you said, it's worth reading. It's worth not just glossing over. These are real judgments, real people that God was talking against, and He pulls out some of the specific things that He was judging them for.
Right.
And so it's
Not that He has to for
No,
us, right?
yeah.
But it is nice to know we have a just God.
yeah.
And it's doing it for a reason, not just a whim.
Yeah, yeah. There's some, and because it's somewhat poetic and it's prophecy. There's some interesting turns of phrase. There's some interesting, ways that God puts some things in here. So don't consider this. I know it's easy to look at passages like this sometimes, and we're just like, just sort of gloss over it.
Yep.
Put the time into reading it, and I think you will be enriched because of it.
Yeah. Good
So,
word.
Yeah.
I was going to say rewarded, but
Maybe that
enriched.
too, right? If nothing else, all Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable, right?
Right.
So when Paul wrote that in 2 Timothy, Jeremiah had been written a long time earlier, and so it's considered in all Scripture. So it is profitable. So, well, that brings us to the end of this one. We have one more session to go, a little bit more prophecy, and then some historical narrative to finish up next time, and we will be done with the book of Jeremiah. As always, if you have questions and comments, please send those our way. Love to hear those from you. We'll see you back next time then.
Bye, everybody.